On Interstate 40, between New Mexico and Arizona, a serious accident was about to happen. A massage bed came loose at highway speed, and it wasn't an accident. It was the first visible crack in how a clinic was being run. The highway was busier than usual. The massage bed wasn't secured properly. It shifted forward, then tilted sideways. For a moment, it hovered at the edge. Then it flew off the roof. Traffic passed underneath. The bed ultimately fell on the side of the road. Luckily, no one was hurt. This wasn't a moving company. These were hourly employees, using their own vehicles. One mistake, and someone could have been hurt. But that wasn't the real issue. It was a symptom of something deeper: cutting corners, ignoring regulations. One employee, Lucy, kept asking questions. She was studying management and knew when things were not in order. And that made her inconvenient. During one argument with the company director, he lost his patience. He said, "If you think you're a better manager just because you're in school, prove it. Otherwise, be ready to face the consequences."
Famous last words.
So she did.
Welcome everyone to Michello's Flavor Podcast. Meet Laundry Lucy, quiet worker, loud brain. This here is Cutting Corner Carlo. Shortcuts first, consequences later. And Greedy Greg, love the numbers, hate the questions. Nancy, take it from here.
This is a story about accountability and what happens when responsibility is pushed downward while authority remains protected. Lucy worked at a physiotherapy clinic near the New Mexico border, one that was preparing to relocate across state lines into Arizona. As the move approached, she raised concerns early. She questioned why the clinic was moving heavy medical equipment without hiring professional movers, and warned that asking employees to handle the relocation themselves introduced unnecessary safety and legal risks. Carlo dismissed her concerns almost immediately. He framed the move as simple, temporary, and manageable. In his view, the staff's flexibility was a cost-saving advantage, not a liability. The owner listened politely when Lucy escalated her concerns. He acknowledged what she said without challenging Carlo's decisions. By choosing inaction, he signaled that results mattered more than process. The disagreement did not stay private for long. It unfolded openly on the clinic floor, within earshot of staff preparing for the move. The tension quickly became visible, forcing others to choose whether to speak or remain silent. Lucy explained the risks in clear, practical terms. She described the dangers of transporting heavy medical equipment in personal vehicles. She also highlighted that the work was being done outside scheduled hours, without compensation, and without formal oversight. Carlo accused Lucy of overthinking the situation. He suggested that she was being rigid and unnecessarily cautious. He implied that her concerns stemmed more from theory than from real-world experience. The move happened fast. Too fast for planning, too fast for safety checks, and too fast for anyone to push back. Employees were informed with little notice and even less preparation. There was no discussion, no briefing, and no opportunity to question the process. It was presented as a decision already made. Professional movers were considered briefly, but the cost was deemed unnecessary. The decision was framed as practical and efficient. Hiring experts was labeled wasteful. Instead, the burden was shifted quietly onto the staff. Employees improvised because they felt they had no choice. Some used compact cars never designed to carry medical equipment. Carlo approved the plan without hesitation. He praised the team for their flexibility. He framed the chaos as teamwork. Employees who questioned the process were ignored. Those who stayed quiet or openly supported him were rewarded with approval. As the vehicles pulled onto the highway, the risk increased with every mile. Equipment shifted under sudden stops. Straps loosened under vibration. Drivers checked their mirrors repeatedly, aware something was wrong. But turning back felt like admitting failure. One mistake finally broke the illusion. A therapy bed shifted suddenly. The straps slipped. The bed lifted at an angle as air rushed underneath it. For a brief moment, it was no longer secured. The bed slid off the car roof. It veered sideways, nearly striking a passing vehicle. Traffic swerved, horns blared. What could have been a serious accident was avoided by seconds. Carlo minimized the incident immediately. He called it a close call. He said nothing bad had happened. He praised the team for getting through it. And he moved on, treating the moment as proof that his decision had worked. Lucy took note. The move drained the staff. Equipment was damaged. Carlo pushed for speed over care. Lucy noticed every detail. The risks followed them inside. Another problem surfaced quickly, only days after the clinic became operational in the new location. What initially appeared to be a temporary inconvenience revealed itself as a serious procedural failure. The move had ended, but the pattern of cutting corners continued. Employees were told to take used medical linens home and wash them themselves. This work was unpaid, performed outside scheduled hours, and treated as an informal favor rather than a job responsibility. No alternative was offered, and no consideration was given to proper medical sanitation standards. Many employees complied without protest. Some did so out of habit, others out of fear of being labeled uncooperative. Several agreed quietly, despite knowing the practice did not meet Arizona's clinical sanitation standards, where inspections were stricter and enforcement more aggressive. Lucy did not comply at first. She understood that in this state, medical linens were classified as regulated materials, requiring specific cleaning procedures. She raised the concern again, warning that the practice could trigger serious penalties, and once again, her warning was ignored. Lucy was told not to make trouble. Some co-workers accused her of being overly critical, even suggesting she was jealous of Carlo's authority. And when Carlo later rewarded compliance with a small celebration of pizza and sodas, many interpreted that gesture as proof that Lucy had been wrong. Isolation followed. Work was still work. The task continued anyway. Lucy waited, but the pressure built. Anton noticed Lucy sitting alone in the clinic's parking lot, long after her break should have ended. She was visibly frustrated, struggling to compose herself after days of tension. He hesitated before approaching, aware that this was not just a bad day, but a breaking point. Lucy explained everything, carefully and without exaggeration. She described the move, the unpaid labor, and the pressure to remain silent. She spoke about the linens, the regulations, and the growing sense that speaking up only made her more isolated. Anton shared his concerns in return, lowering his voice instinctively. He explained that Carlo had begun relying on what he called traditional accounting practices. Costs were being reclassified, explanations simplified, and scrutiny discouraged. Oversight from Greg faded as the financial reports began to improve. Before they parted, Anton shared one final detail: a bombshell. After the near accident during the move, the driver whose car was almost struck had been paid to stay quiet. The payment came from company funds, quietly recorded under the Linen Cleaning Cost Center. They parted ways without saying much after that. Not because there was nothing left to say, but because both understood the weight of what had been shared. Around that time, Lucy attended one of her management classes, one focused not on theory, but on responsibility. The discussion centered on how real organizations fail, not through a single bad decision, but through patterns that go unchallenged. For Lucy, the timing was impossible to ignore. The lesson focused on risk, not as an abstract concept, but as a measurable consequence of leadership behavior. Risk created when shortcuts replace process. Risk created when authority discourages questions. Risk that grows quietly when early warnings are dismissed. Lucy made the connection. The move, the linens, the numbers. It wasn't mismanagement. It was systemic risk. So Lucy stopped debating. She started documenting messages, schedules, hours. Regulations mattered and timing mattered. Everything was logged. So she waited. Armed with what she had learned in class and supported by careful documentation, Lucy raised her concerns one final time. This time, she did so privately, requesting a meeting with the company owner rather than confronting management publicly. She came prepared, with timelines, records, and a clear explanation of how the risks were connected. Greg listened attentively. He asked questions, reviewed the materials, and appeared genuinely interested in what Lucy had uncovered. For a moment, it seemed possible that the conversation might lead to change. But the numbers looked good. Revenue was up, expenses appeared controlled, and recent reports painted a picture of progress. Against that backdrop, Lucy's concerns felt theoretical, difficult to reconcile with visible success. Greg trusted Carlo. He admired Carlo's old-fashioned, almost cowboy approach to management. It reminded him of a bolder, younger version of himself, decisive, unencumbered, and willing to take risks. Lucy understood then that this was not a lack of information. It was a choice. Authority, she realized, has blind spots. The system stayed unchanged, but the risk remained, for now. Lucy prepared for what came next. Not long after, Anton was let go. His dismissal followed a private confrontation with Carlo after Anton raised concerns about an approaching IRS audit and the state of the clinic's books. Lucy and Anton met again briefly at a small local cafe, away from the clinic and away from prying eyes. This time, Anton was no longer guarded. The professional distance that had defined their earlier conversations was gone. Anton explained that the pressure inside the accounting department had intensified rapidly. What began as dismissal escalated into confrontation. Oversight had disappeared completely. Greg no longer reviewed details, relying entirely on surface-level results. When Anton pushed back, Carlo took him into his private office, where the discussion became heated, personal, and eventually physical. Carlo fired Anton on the spot. The incident happened behind closed doors, leaving no witnesses and no record, except for Anton's account. In that moment, the risks Lucy had been warning about were no longer theoretical. They were immediate, personal, and dangerous. Lucy listened quietly, deeply affected. She admired that Anton had stood his ground, even when it cost him his job. The evening before the scheduled health inspection, Lucy knew the timing mattered more than ever. Lucy reviewed the health regulations one last time, confirming exactly how medical linens were required to be handled in this state. She clocked in, treating the task exactly as what it was, paid work assigned by management. She started the washer at home, following Carlo's instructions precisely while preparing for what would happen the next morning. The scheduled health inspection began the following morning, exactly as Lucy had anticipated. The issue was noticed almost immediately, before the inspection had progressed very far. Inspectors identified that healthcare linens had been cleaned off-site without approved industrial equipment or documented sanitation controls. Carlo panicked. Amid mounting accounting pressure and internal chaos, he had forgotten the inspection entirely. He was juggling too many shortcuts at once, and losing control of all of them. Greg was not blindsided. Instead, he finally saw the consequences of his inaction laid out in front of him. What Lucy had warned about was no longer theoretical. The clinic was fined for multiple violations related to sanitation and procedure. The penalties were significant enough to demand immediate change. Corrective action was mandated. Lucy was promoted immediately into a newly created role, Operations and Compliance Manager, reporting directly to Greg. With her new authority, Lucy began asking questions that had previously been ignored. She questioned the clinic's accounting practices, focusing on how costs were categorized and who was reviewing them. Carlo denied any wrongdoing, insisting the numbers were accurate. He presented favorable summaries that highlighted growth while avoiding scrutiny of the details. Greg hesitated, caught between mounting concerns and results he had grown accustomed to trusting. He didn't trust Lucy enough yet. Ultimately, he delayed action, the decision that would later be identified as the last nail in the coffin. In that moment, Greg didn't just protect Carlo. He ensured the collapse would be total. The audit followed soon after, leaving little time for further avoidance. Financial records were reviewed in detail, far beyond surface-level summaries. Patterns began to emerge, revealing inconsistencies that could no longer be explained away. Irregularities accumulated across departments, connecting operational shortcuts with accounting manipulation. Penalties followed, significant enough to force structural consequences. One clinic location was sold to cover the combined costs of fines and corrective actions. Carlo was exposed, fired, and later sued for malpractice and fraud, including the improper payment made to silence the driver involved in the near accident, a detail uncovered during the audit. Lucy was formally promoted, entrusted with rebuilding operations under clear accountability. Proper controls were restored, replacing trust-based management with verified oversight. Anton was rehired by Lucy, returning to rebuild the accounting function he had tried to protect. Stability gradually returned. Lucy and Anton kept their relationship professional, choosing distance over familiarity, determined not to repeat the mistakes that had brought the clinic to the brink.
He said prove it. She proved it. Wash smart, document smarter. Keep it clean in the books and the laundry. See you next time.